This is the War Boys podcast. I'm Mose Blauner.
And I'm Ben Cohn.
And today we're going to be talking about some of the chaos that's happening in Haiti, particularly following the story of Jimmy Cherizier, aka Barbeque, and his rise to power and sort of the turmoil, chaos and turmoil that he's brought in Haiti with him.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people found out about Barbeque because of all the memes and the stupid stuff being spread around the internet. There is, just for the record, there's no evidence that he's ever cooked and eaten another human being.
Yeah, the barbecue does not come from that. It's actually his mom was a great barbecue cook and had really good chicken. Yeah. And so he was named after that. But
I'm not saying that at one point somebody wasn't cooked and eaten.
It does seem that that is happening in the streets of Port-au-Prince.
Well, it's just a really horrible, desperate situation. I mean, people are starving.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things just happen. Yeah,
definitely, without a doubt. When there's so much food insecurity, and I mean, this is a country that's been in turmoil. I mean, since its inception, pretty much. I
would say like the first 50 years of the country were probably the best, even though they were invaded twice. They had such a, Toussaint Louverture was like just a great leader. I mean, he sort of became a dictator, but no other history. I mean, Haiti's history is so fascinating and it's so deep. And we're not really going to touch as much on the background today just because there's so much to get into. But it's important to mention that there's no other example of a colony of slaves revolting like this and creating a country. Yeah.
And I mean, it's had its ups and downs, but I mean, you look at their history and you see it's just like not a very stable place. I mean,
they're also incredibly unlucky in terms of the environment, the earthquakes and things like that.
Rafael Trujillo did sort of maintain the Dominican Republic's environment in a much better way, and so like right now they're in a much better state.
Well, they also got, if you look at the topography, they got the much better, bigger slice of Hispaniola than Haiti got.
I mean, Haiti, it was, to my understanding, Hispaniola was pretty much like all jungle, and like because their economy was so imperiled for so long, they sort of relied on extractive industries and didn't do anything to protect their ecology. And so by the time when it became time to pay the piper, there was horrible erosion happening. They didn't really have any of the like long range ecology and economics that you need to maintain a place. But just to continue off your point, I mean, in an interview, the editor of the biggest newspaper in Port-au-Prince, France Duval, said in an interview with Vox in 2021 that the chaos that we're seeing now really started with the 2010 earthquake, and that the country never really recovered from that.
I remember how people were sort of how upset people were by that, and also how much aid. I remember people trying to gather, but aid is only worth as much as it is, on the ground, because like with a lot of these situations, only like a very small percentage of the money and products and food and everything that's getting there actually gets to the people that need it. Right.
Yeah. I think, everyone needs it. People call it like the ultimate welfare state because it's just like constantly being propped up. But, you're right that, it gets squandered a lot of the time, either like by the organization or by the government. It's being
corrupt politicians. I mean, they're just notorious.
Yeah. Haiti is sort of known for its corruption.
It sort of feels like they just go around like, was Ariel Henry the one that was the neurosurgeon?
He was the neurosurgeon. He was the prime minister for the president, Jovenel Moise, who was assassinated in 2021. It
just sort of feels like they're sort of trying to, like, a neurosurgeon. Okay, smart guy, knows a lot.
Yeah,
Let's see what he can do. It's sort of like at this point,
maybe he'll get the job done.
Because that is one of the hardest things to do in the world. They say is brain surgery. So they're like, well, let's try something.
Then again, we tried to elect a brain surgeon, and he's a great one, but not very good at everything else. R.I.P. Ben Carson.
But no, I mean, like, that was definitely a big, but since 2010, it feels like, I think France's point was that there hasn't been stability. They've had these governments come and go, and at this point, the gangs, at the point we've gotten to now, the gangs are de facto, are basically in control of the country.
Yeah. They operate with about as much authority as the police do. The government seems to be very much in flux and seems to be whoever can sort of catch like the eye of the people for a short amount of time and has sort of the money to back them. Like very famously, the assassinated president, again, Jovenel Moise, was connected with a scandal called the Petrocaribe scandal, where essentially they were paying Venezuela to extract Haiti's oil, but Venezuela was bribing Jovenel Moise.
I'm assuming this is offshore oil.
Yeah. They don't have any onshore oil reserves, but basically Venezuela has an agreement with all of these small Caribbean islands that they will help them extract the oil and process it. And in exchange, they'll ship it back to them. But it ends up with Haiti having to pay $2.3 billion to Venezuela to get their own oil back or to get any oil. And that's, in a country that's massively impoverished and seems to always be in a state of insecurity. That's a massive amount of money.
Yeah. And I think they're still paying back the French from what I
it was something crazy like 21 billion, right?
What's so wild to me is that you can charge somebody for like kicking you out of their country.
Yeah.
Like I remember reading about, like, learning about this in a French Revolution class that I took, but I still don't understand. It's like reverse reparations. It's like
France. It's time to like knock that off. You know,
you guys are doing fine.
Yeah.
Like Haiti. No, but I really feel like things, even though 2010 earthquake was definitely part of where we are now. I feel like the 2021 assassination of the president has taken us to this next level of instability that we have now.
Definitely.
Sort of I remember when that happened and I was following it and it was just like, this can't be real. It just seems like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
Colombian mercs going into the presidential palace.
As well as a few former DEA agents.
Yeah.
So, at the time, people sort of claimed it had the tacit backing of the U.S. government. Whether there's any truth to that is unclear.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, we just have our fingers in all the pies.
Yeah, of course.
But, I think we're kind of, personally, I think the U.S. is probably done with Haiti. At least done with sending military forces or anything, because we've occupied the country once for a really long time. I think in the 30s.
From 1915 to about 1935. Yeah. And then again in the 1990s.
It's like 20 years,
it didn't really seem to work either time.
Yeah, I don't think anyone, whether it's the international community, the Americans or the Haitians would have the stomach for that right now.
Yeah.
American military force. And like, do we really want to send the Marines to get into gun battles on the streets with these Barbeque's men?
Yeah. It's very interesting. Barbeque has said that he does not really want to take control.
Mm-hmm. Sure, buddy.
Well, he has stated he's like, I don't want to be president.
It's crazy now that he's gotten to the level where he's giving like press conferences to like AP.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Well, he's sort of the leading voice, right?
There's just a vacuum, right?
Yeah. To backtrack a little bit, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Essentially what had happened was that in 2021, Jovenel Moise was assassinated by this team of mercenaries. Then his prime minister, Ariel Henry, stepped in and became sort of interim president and then sort of stayed in office. There had been a lot of rumors about him regarding his possible involvement in the assassination plot, including him being connected to the orchestrators of it, who I believe have an unbelievably silly name.
Oh, it's the shell company that paid the mercs was known as the World Investment Development Group, which isn't suspect at all, right?
It sounds like what Dr. Evil would be buying, like assassinating people through.
I mean, the one damning thing about Ariel Henry is that there's this is factual. On the morning of the assassination at 4 a.m., he made 2 calls to somebody who's been identified as the mastermind of the assassination. He made 2 calls to the guy, 4 a.m. the morning of the assassination. Then later, when he was being investigated for partly being behind it, he fired the prosecutor who was investigating. Man, I mean, those are some pretty guilty looking things to be doing. I mean, it turns out everybody was involved in this assassination.
Yeah, even the first lady, right?
Yeah, no. Originally, it seemed like she was a hero because she, according to her, she played dead when all these gunmen came in, which seemed a little suspicious because they fired hundreds of rounds of ammunition. They shot at the guy, and she's like, oh, I played dead. And then, they just didn't notice me. But like, I don't know. These guys seem like professionals.
Yeah.
So, and it turned out later that she might actually have been complicit.
She was indicted, right?
Yeah. This was recently. This was this year, 2023. She was indicted because they're still looking into the assassination. They haven't really found anybody guilty. I mean, they obviously they caught a couple of the guys that did it, but those were the soldiers, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they named my personal favorite member of this story, Innocent, which literally translates as the innocent man. As involved, he's on Haiti's top 10 most wanted list, and I believe also on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list.
And he's been sanctioned by the EU, whatever that means.
Yeah,
I'm sure
he's just sort of out there. Like they don't really have the resources to.
Well, he's apparently one of the most powerful gang leaders in the country.
And I mean, there is really something to be said for that. Like the power of gangs, like Barbeque, was before he was, the public figure we know him as now. He was a police officer in what seems to be some sort of riot police or some sort of specialized response group called the UDMO, and was involved in a series of pretty horrific massacres. After that, he was fired and formed the group G9 or FRG9. Stands for the Revolutionary Forces of the G9 Family and Allies. Mm-hmm. I won't try and butcher the pronunciation in Haitian Creole. But that's a unified group of gangs, and they actually seem to work under the auspices of Jovenel Moise, doing a lot of social outreach and food delivery, as well as operating to suppress a lot of dissidents and like violence in the streets. So they were sort of a tacit wing.
Barbeque was apparently very upset by the assassination. There's like a video of him pouring one out for him, and like with like a picture of him and everything and candles. It's a voodoo ceremony. Yeah. But according to the New York Times, this is a direct quote. He was about to name names.
Jovenel Moise was.
Yeah, correct. Sorry, I should have given the context. But basically, for those who don't know, Haiti is sort of a landing strip for the cartels. And because of the lawlessness and, there's a lot of, there's a bunch of parts of the country that are basically are not under government jurisdiction. Yeah. And so the cartel for years has been using it as a landing strip to get small planes with drugs into the U.S. And it's possible that there was a crackdown coming. So there's kind of a lot of forces at play here. It's almost like with the Kennedy assassination, right? It's like he pissed off a lot of people. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that could have done this and a lot of people that could have been behind this. Yeah.
It wasn't just like one obvious perpetrator.
Yeah. But no, there's a quote here from the Times. In interrogation, some of the captured hitmen confessed that retrieving the list that Mr. Moise had been working on with names of suspected drug traffickers was a top priority, according to 3 senior Haitian officials with knowledge of the investigation. So partly it could have been that they were working on something. It could have been that, he was planning on targeting these top guys, but whatever it was, they got to him first.
Yeah. Before he could really make any moves.
Yeah. But no, it's interesting what you were saying earlier about how the gangs would sort of work for different political figures. That's kind of how it is in Haiti, right? Like different gangs will ally themselves with different political figures.
Yeah.
And sort of be their, they're like representatives in the street in a way. I mean, it's kind of it might be a kind of a stretch, but I know we talked about this before, but it does remind me a bit of the Roman Aventine.
Yeah. It's sort of that. It is. There's something very classical about it. Like, especially given that like Jonavel Moise, who was the sort of the patron of Barbeque, was killed. And then years later, he sort of rises back up and deposes Ariel Henry, who we suspect may have been involved in this assassination plot. And there's something very almost Julius Caesar about that whole like interaction that like the people are rising back up.
Right after Caesar's assassinated, when Mark Antony and Octavian have formed an alliance.
Exactly. Yeah. And then depose, the people who would Quintus Brutus and all the other assassins.
I mean, the other kind of suspicious thing is that the assassins met no resistance.
That is very odd. That doesn't quite.
And there's normally, I think, over 100 soldiers guarding the palace, and that day there was 6.
Yeah, that is very
and
odd.
None of those guys even had a scratch. I mean, it was like, and there's also some reports that there was like an insider, like a mole inside the palace, who basically was like, "Hey guys, you're gonna want to get out of here. This is gonna get rough, and
things are about to get crazy."
But I don't know. It's that whole thing I feel like was just crazy, and the fact that they weren't actually ever able to find one person they could say this is the mastermind is sort of doesn't really bode well, I guess.
I mean, like, again, it's such a country in chaos that like I'd be curious what the like institutional investigation looks like. Like they don't really have many resources to put towards this. Especially given that, there seemed to have been mounting chaos. The G9 was like running rampant through the streets. And then earlier this year, they staged a massive jailbreak of about 4,700 inmates to like really cause chaos. And they laid siege to Saint-Louverture Airport, the main airport for the country. Yeah. Not just like an airport, but the main airport, and started to threaten civil war unless Ariel Henry stepped down. Like, I doubt the institutions have time to be investigating like, an assassination, even if it's a presidential assassination. That's still, you're still dealing with a lot. Like, the Department of Justice in America moves slowly. I can't imagine it's a nimble operation in Haiti.
Well, I should say that maybe Barbeque doesn't want to be a leader, or claims he doesn't want to become leader of Haiti. But according to an article I read, I think it was in the New Yorker, he has on his phone case is a picture of his face superimposed on Che Guevara, and he also has a picture of Papa Doc.
Okay, that's concerning.
Yeah. For those who don't know, there's a former dictator of Haiti who was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Basically a voodoo priest / dictator.
Who sort of, combined sort of voodoo mysticism with ultra violence to rain terror on the people of Haiti for, I believe, roughly 30 years.
Yeah. And things are bad if somebody's calling for a return of that.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, there was that. Might have been the voodoo killings, but at least we had stability, right?
Yeah.
At least, the buses ran on time, like people said about Mussolini, or the trains.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know what people actually think about Papa Doc, but are like, what, the institution, what like stability in the country actually looked like then.
Yeah.
But
no, I'd be curious to talk to some people in the Haitian diaspora, because we have a lot. Especially on the East Coast, and Florida, of course. But
yeah.
I'd be really curious to talk to some people in the Haitian diaspora to hear what they have to say about like, are they who do they want? And also how involved are they? I know some people leave the country and then they're just like, screw this. But I know at one point there was a Haitian American president of Haiti.
I think there's been a couple. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're sort of in a terrible place. as well, given that like the Dominican Republic is so anti-Haiti and so viciously like
we can say racist,
towards Haitians. And so the border is so definitively closed. Like they shoot people trying to get over the border. And like, so they're sort of stuck in a, between a rock and a hard place in that, like, generally if there was like chaos in a neighboring country, like, a nation that would share an island would likely step in and just sort of like try and at least put some control over it. But
I saw something really bizarre, which is that amongst all of this, there's still a couple islands and resorts within Haitian territory.
Yeah.
It's like very luxurious high-end places and they're still operating. But
I bet they're very cheap these days.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I should look into it. 50% off.
Well, the question is, how do you get there?
Boat.
Yeah,
you can't fly.
Yeah, just all over to our airports under siege.
Could you imagine being like, "Oh, honey, our all-inclusive paid vacation. Where is it?
Haiti. We got to fly through Port-au-Prince.
No, it's beautiful. It's a private island. It's beautiful. They got everything. White sands. Why couldn't we go to Mexico? Everybody's going to Tulum. Yeah, but I got a great deal.
Yeah.
No, but maybe we should mention what was going on. What was going on with Kenya? Because at one point it's kind of out of nowhere. Because usually this is the UN's job, but we all know the UN doesn't do dick.
Yeah.
So at one point, what were the Kenyans doing?
So in 2022, they had actually sort of floated this idea because
started that early.
Yeah, because the country was still in such chaos after the assassination. The National Network for Defense of Human Rights claimed that there were roughly more than 5 kidnappings a day in Haiti, which is just an absurd number for a pretty small country. And so
what's the point of kidnapping somebody? For ransom?
I would suppose so, or political power. Yeah. Your next square meal. Right. But essentially the State Department had sat down with the Kenyan government and had started to set up an operation whereby Kenya would send roughly 1,000 police officers to Haiti in order to provide peacekeeping services.
I don't know. It kind of sounds dumb from the beginning because you just mentioned 4,700 inmates that were broken out, right?
Yeah.
That's a 5 to 1 just from that. Like,
yeah, seriously.
These guys that they send in better be heavily armored.
Like, yeah. I mean, just like the way the operation was going to be set up was that they were going to be buying landing craft that we had used during D-Day and like similar designed landing craft to like invade this country.
Couldn't see that going wrong.
Yeah. Because American backed invasions in the Caribbean have gone so well in the past.
Why Kenya? I don't actually know the answer to this, but like it seems so far off.
They're a relatively established country. They have a decent trained military and police force and a strong enough economy to start to strike out. I think it was probably them or Nigeria.
But like, why no other Caribbean or Central South American nation?
I mean, I'm not sure that Brazil really had it together enough. And also, especially under Bolsonaro, they were probably so like caught up in their own chaos. And I think also there's probably there were some optics discussions. Like, as we mentioned before, there's been multiple occupations by U.S. forces. So they probably didn't want the visual of, America occupying a country of like dark complected people again. Like,
I couldn't imagine. I could imagine that wouldn't turn out great, but
especially in 2022 and given the backlash from like a lot of the civil rights protests that were happening in America, like a lot of the George Floyd protests, like I think that really would have added to a lot of anti-American sentiment in the U.S.
Not if we bring back the draft, baby.
Charlie Rangel is smiling from
send them all to Haiti.
Yeah. But I mean, that brings up a really interesting question, right? Like, what happens next? Like,
I don't think anyone knows the answer to that.
Yeah. Do we invade though? Like,
no, I don't think that's.
Do we have Kenya do it for us? Like,
yeah. Well, like, again, I wish we had. If only there was an international organization that was supposed to bring peace and stability to the world. Like, most of the time they're like messing around with the local populace.
They're raping. They're raping the local populace.
Look what happened on October 7th. I mean, it's just like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, there's countless accounts of sexual assault by UN peacekeepers.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the benefit of an American occupation is that we have a professional military force. I think that we're much less likely to do that. France Duval was asked in 2021 whether he had hope for Haiti. I think he said something along the lines of, "Don't ask me that question. I don't have an answer for you." What happens next? I mean, like, is there a world in which there's like a South American intervention, or like, the Caribbean comes together? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they have particularly large militaries to like intervene in that way. And Mexico's so caught up in the cartel wars right now, it's pretty hard for them to be stepping outside their own borders.
But effectively, it's anarchy. I mean, they have no government.
None at all. And Ariel Henry having resigned, and Barbeque saying that he doesn't want the posting, leaves no one in charge.
Having Barbeque as de facto leader is not great. So there has to be some alternative to that. And, I just think, again, it's so sad because the Haitian people are a great people.
Yeah.
And they have a rich history and just like fascinating history. And again, Toussaint Louverture, one of the greatest historical figures, great general. They should be like a proud and like independent democratic nation, but it's terrible luck combined with the instability and really unstable society combined with a terrible trade deal with Venezuela. One of the worst trade deals. No, but in all seriousness, my heart does go out to the people.
100%.
Not, all corniness aside, it's just like, growing up in Brooklyn, I'm sure you knew a lot of Haitians, and like just growing up in the city, like
sure. Yeah.
All great dudes, just awesome. And like, they're also all very patriotic.
Yeah. I think like a lot of what we see in Haiti now is just like people like living in desperate situations. And like, it's sort of this like, because there's no options, like it's just crime down there because there's no real industry. There's no real like businesses down there anymore. Yeah. So like, it's very hard, I think, to like build something back up, like
basically starting from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think they'd be far better off if they had like they can't even grow their own crops. Yeah. Like,
well, most of it's not arable land, right?
But that's by their own design. Yeah. That's what I was touching on earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's mountainous though, to a degree, right?
Not terribly, not as like, but like when you look at Haiti on a map, you can actually see that like the border with the Dominican Republic, the eastern side, which is the DR, is like lush and green, and then if you go right over the border, it is desertous and brown. It is like
Also, like you look at DR, look at all the roads. These are all like major highways. Haiti has like 3,
and they're basically just ring the country, right?
Yeah. No, I mean it's a really, really tough place. It's a really, really tough place to govern and just have it be a successful country. Yeah. They were just dealt a really bad hand, and like, the sort of U shape that it makes. Almost everyone lives in Port-au-Prince and in that area. The rest of the country is pretty much empty. Yeah,
I mean, there's not much else there, so.
The U.S. started basically choppering out most of their employees there, including the ambassadors leaving, and sort of some of the wealthier neighborhoods. It's sort of last chopper out of Saigon.
Yeah, I was about to say that's sort of the sign that you're giving up on a place that when you start like pulling the ambassador. Thanks so much for listening to the War Boys podcast.